Bungie's ambitious sci-fi shooter Destiny had a somewhat tumultuous development, but was finally released in September of 2014. Since release, the game has had subsequent expansions that, well, expand on the game. They progress the story and deepen the background of the universe. The story is told mainly through missions in the game, which are sectioned into multiple quests, and through grimoire cards which are unlocked on Bungie's website as the game is played. Using these quests and grimoire cards as guidelines, we can trace the story of our Guardians as they become legend in the war against the darkness in our solar system. Now, the story in its entirety would be too long to tell, so it'll be broken into parts. This is part 1. Using the natural progression of the game, part 1 deals with a combination of parts of the original game's story, mainly the early bits, and the entirety of the Dark Below. There are also some minor adjustments to some of the quests to make more narrative sense. Obviously, there are massive spoilers ahead, so take this as your warning. The story opens with a ghost scouring a scrapyard outside an old cosmodrome in Russia. It's searched for many years for a person that is able to wield the light as a weapon, a guardian, and finally its search comes to an end. Using the power of the light within the person, the ghost is able to literally bring them back to life. Their eyes open for the first time in centuries, and they hear Ghost call them awake. The Guardian is revived, but far from safe. The Cosmodrome is under the control of the fallen House of Devils, and the duo are deep in their territory. Ghost urges to get inside the wall to try and sneak past the Fallen, but the Fallen have already found them and begin to attack. The Guardian picks up a rustic Golden Age gun and fights their way through the Fallen. They find an old ship that looks like it hasn't flown in centuries, but it's quickly made operable by Ghost. Just in time, too, as a fallen Archon comes climbing out of a hole in the wall hunting the Guardian and its ghost. After escaping, Ghost explains to its newly revived Guardian that humanity used to stretch across the stars, but now has one last safe place left. One last city sheltered underneath the Traveler. Ghost has flown the Guardian to their new home in the last city, the Tower. It is from here the Guardian will begin their battle against the darkness. Managing the front lines of the war is the Vanguard, and each class has their own quartermaster. Ikora Rey for Warlocks, Cade 6 for Hunters, and Commander Zavala for Titans. Their quartermaster welcomes the new Guardian and gifts them with a new piece of armor. They notice the gun they have is pretty old and instructs them to meet with the gunsmith Banshee 44 to obtain a new weapon, and to head to Tower Engineer Miranda Holiday to retrieve their ship. She notes that the ship is working but is missing a warp drive, and suggests asking Commander Zavala about it. The only advice Zavala offers is to return to the Cosmodrome and scavenge for a warp drive. So, the Guardian returns to the Cosmodrome, and Ghost notes that a Guardian ship was shot down, and suggests there might be parts to salvage. Unfortunately, the Fallen have already gotten to the ship, and taken the warp drive. The Guardian returns to Dock 13 where they found their ship, and try to wrest the warp drive from the hands of one of the Fallen leaders, an Archon named Rixus, who collects the skulls of dead Guardians as trophies. Despite lacking the experience of a seasoned warrior, the Guardian fights, and they manage to put an end to Rixus' reign of terror, and obtain the warp drive. Amazed, Ghost wants the Guardian to meet with the Speaker as soon as possible. The Speaker meets with the Guardian and explains the Traveler went silent after a battle with the darkness, but created the ghosts before it fell into its slumber. He also explains to the Guardian that they are losing the battle against the darkness, but asks the Guardian to keep hope alive and keep fighting to push the darkness back. The Guardian meets with Zavala, who is mightily impressed that they managed to slay Rixus, the Devil Scourge of the Cosmodrome. With the death of one of their leaders, the power of the House of Devils has had over the area has decreased substantially. More areas of the Cosmodrome have become accessible as a result, and he tasks the Guardian with investigating fallen activity in the Forgotten Shore. The Guardian finds the Devils are amplifying a transmission, and traces it to the old Skywatch building over the Forgotten Shore. Here they find another fallen house. The House of Kings are trying to access the computers of the Skywatch, but something is preventing them from gaining the information they want. After being deployed, Ghost finds that a complex AI who was built to defend Earth was fighting back against the Fallen. This AI is the Warmind Rasputin, who is rumored to have been destroyed in the collapse centuries ago. Rasputin was in control of the entirety of Earth's defenses all those years ago, and if he could be recruited to continue the fight against the darkness, then humanity might actually have a chance to push the darkness back. The Vanguard quickly works on trying to re-establish contact with Rasputin. In the meantime, they send the Guardian to check out the old Skywatch building to find out why the Fallen are so interested in it. The Guardian finds a locked door and travels through the muck and the murk of the halls to find a terrifying enemy, the Hive. The Guardians fought against these monsters years ago in a great battle over control of the moon. It was a war they lost. The Vanguard were confident in their forces, but the Guardians struggled against the weaponry of the Hive. Worst of all, they did not suspect the presence of a god. Hundreds of Guardians fell to the Hive armies as their god used his dark sword to carve out their light, while green fire burned in the sky. The Vanguard ordered a massive retreat and prohibited any operations on or around the moon, a ban they called the Lunar Interdiction. Survivors of the Great Disaster with any accurate assessment of losses or gained intelligence were ordered to debrief with the Vanguard. Among the stories of the survivors was one told by Ariana III, an exo-warlock of the Order of Praxic Fire. She interrogated a Hive wizard and gained the name of the god who wrought such ruin upon the Guardians, a foul name that was soon burned into the memory of the moon, Crota. If this ancient enemy has begun an invasion of Earth, then the tower and the last city may soon be destroyed. The Guardian fights their way through the Hive horde and slays the wizard at the top of the building. The Guardian immediately returns to the tower and reports to Zavala. Hearing about the Hive deeply concerns him. He immediately informs the Speaker, who decides to lift Lunar Interdiction and return Guardians to the moon. But before Guardians can travel to the moon, they'll need to be able to connect with the old colonies there. Well, unfortunately, all the old arrays on Earth were destroyed in the collapse. But Dead Orbit recently received codes to a last hidden array that may still be active in the Cosmodrome. However, their team went dark, and it's unknown if they found the array. The Guardian travels through the lunar complex to the top of the Skywatch, and find that the Guardians failed in their mission. But one of their dead ghosts still holds the codes. They head off into another complex and find the array control station. Amazingly, the codes still work, and the array begins to open. Suddenly, the Hive cut through the array and begin an attack, and the Guardian defends the array from being destroyed by them. Ghost beckons the Guardian back to the control panel to tell them that the array is being controlled by Rasputin. Not only did the Warmind survive the collapse, but he's still active, and is now connecting to defense networks all across the inner solar system. However, he isn't responding to any attempts at contact made by the Vanguard. But with the array open, the Guardian is able to travel to not only the moon, but also other planets with their warp drive. But their first mission is to find out what the Hive are planning on the moon. The Speaker lifts Lunar Interdiction and tasks the Guardian with following the trail of the last Guardian that went to the moon. The Guardian finds that the previous Guardian fought a newly formed fallen house called the House of Exile, which is made up of rejects and failures from other fallen houses. They continue following the trail and end up in front of a temple to the Hive god Crota. Here, they find the Guardian dead, and notice that their ghost is missing. The Guardian feels a presence and turns to see someone staring down on him. However, the runes on the door of the temple begin releasing, tearing the Guardian's attention away from the stranger, and Hive begin flooding out of the temple. The Guardian fights off the Hive as they begin a retreat, but Ghost notes that the dead Guardian's ghost is inside the temple. The Guardian pushes inside and rescues the ghost from the clutches of the Hive Wizard Varrock. It's returned to the tower, where the Speaker looks over its memories. He discovers that the Hive are building an army, planning to invade Earth. He remembers the devastation of the moon, and diverts the tower's attention to ending this threat. He begins by sending the Guardian to find a vast library called the World's Grave he found in the ghost's memories. Revealing the secrets of the library could give them the edge they need to beat the Hive. The Guardian manages to penetrate the murk of the Hellmouth and steal information from the Hive library. The amount of information stolen is incredible, and the Cryptarchs of the tower work day and night trying to decipher what they can. One thing they are able to find out is that the Hive have a dark shrine in their fortress. This shrine is described by an old exiled warlock named Osiris as a shrine of Oryx, and he found it imperative to destroy these shrines as quickly as possible. The speaker gives the Guardian leave to delve into the gloom of the Hive tunnels to destroy the one in the Hellmouth. The Guardian manages to find the Shrine of Oryx deep in the Hellmouth and begins the process to destroy it. But its protector, Sardok, Eye of Oryx, appears to save the shrine. However, he is defeated, and the shrine is destroyed by the Guardian, severing the connection to the Hive god or king it was communing with. Meanwhile, the Cryptarchs have been hard at work deciphering the information from the world's grave. They find out that the Hive have destroyed numerous worlds and have been seeding Earth for centuries, preparing for an invasion. They've also found record of a monster they're creating to use in the Earth invasion, and they found traces of some sort of dark ritual, but need more time to figure out what that is. In the meantime, Ikora Rey decides to put together a team to destroy the Hive abomination mentioned in the grave. The Guardian volunteers for a spot on the team, and with 2 other Guardians, strikes the Hellmouth and destroys the massive ogre being bred for the invasion. The Guardian begins to head home, but suddenly they get an urgent transmission from the speaker. The Cryptarchs have discovered that the Hive are conducting a ritual that is actually actively draining the Traveler of its light, and he's desperate to end the ritual. So he sends the Guardian back to the moon to save the Traveler. The Guardian needs to find out which of the numerous chambers of the Hellmouth house the ritual, so Ghost maps the caverns via some cracks from the surface. He finds it deeper in the Temple of Crota and directs the Guardian there. Before heading down into the deep, Ghost begins to receive a mysterious transmission, and figures it's the speaker. They get a clear signal on the open and are surprised to find it's not the speaker, but a stranger. The voice is impressed by the Guardian's actions, but not too impressed, and warns of an enemy worse than the Hive. They tell the Guardian to find them if they're successful against the Hive, and leave some broken coordinates with their ghost. Choosing to face the present danger, the Guardian heads down and finds 3 Siphon Witches gathered around an object with a dark aura around it. The Guardian kills the Siphon Witches, and the Hive retaliate, even sending their champion Telthor the Unborn against the Guardian. But ultimately they falter in the face of the light. In the aftermath, Ghost finds that the ritual is being conducted using a shard of the Traveler itself, draining its light. He sends it off to the tower, and the speaker is relieved to hear of the Guardian's victory. He is convinced that after their most recent defeat, the Hive will think twice before invading Earth, and thus, the Hive threat is over for the time being. However, a voice has appeared in the tower saying the Hive threat is not over, but only just beginning. The great disaster of the moon weighed heavy on the minds of some Guardians whom vowed revenge against the Hive for their atrocities. One of these Guardians was Ariana III. She worked together with another Guardian named Eris Morn to find out how to kill Crota. They eventually turned to a forbidden source, Toland the Shattered, who was banished from the tower after his research into the secrets of the Hive drove him crazy. Together with Toland, Ariana and Eris built a fire team of 6 Guardians and secretly made their way to the moon to assassinate the Hive god. They penetrated deep into the Hive fortress and were successful in slaying Crota. However, death was nothing new to him. Although they destroyed his physical form, Crota's soul was sent to his ascendant realm, where it's regaining its strength to one day return and conquer the Earth. This is the story told by Eris Morn, the sole survivor of that valiant fire team that set out to the moon so many years ago. She has returned to the tower, warning that Crota is about to wake, and the proof is in a relic long thought destroyed. Dismissed by the Vanguard, the Guardian listens to her pleas and returns to the Hellmouth to find the ancient relic that was used against the Guardians by the Hive, the Sword of Crota. The Guardian destroys its makers, which in turn causes the sword to vanish. But not before the Guardian gets a taste of its power. The Guardian begins to return to the tower to tell about the destruction of the sword, when suddenly the Hive begin their invasion of Earth. The Hive army vanguard is led by Sardon, the Fist of Crota, who begins by attacking the fallen House of Devils. Knowing now that she speaks the truth, the vanguard dispatch the Guardian to Eris's command, who immediately sends them back to Earth to repel the invasion. As they move against Sardon, they get a glimpse of the will that raised this army, Omnigor. The Guardian kills Sardon and beats back the first assault of the Hive. However, Eris has found that Omnigul is now moving against Rasputin in an attempt to get around his defense systems or control him. Rescuing Rasputin seems a daunting task, especially since he responds with violence to intruders, and he still has not responded to contact attempts by the Vanguard. The Guardian approaches the menacing door to his vault, unsure of what to expect, when Rasputin himself actually allows the Guardian access into his Seraphim vault. The Guardian enters and finds the Hive have already found their way inside. They repel the invaders from the Warmind's bunker and force his Omnigul to retreat. She falls back to her last stronghold, the Jovian complex, to rebuild the strength of Crota's army. But the Guardians now begin a counterattack. They fight through the Fallen and Skywatch and through the Hive in the Jovian complex and trap Omnigul in the back chamber, where she puts up a vicious fight, but is finally slain. With no will to raise an army, Earth is safe from a Hive invasion for the time being. But Eris learns the Hive are beginning the ritual to finally wake Crota's soul and return him to the physical world to finally conquer the Earth. The Guardian continues their counterattack and travels deep into the darkest chamber of the Hellmouth, where they find the crystal housing Crota's soul. They interrupt the awakening ritual and kill the Wakers of Crota, preventing Crota's return. However, a roar emanates through the chamber and the crystal lifts into the air. Eris screams to destroy the crystal as Hive thrash about to defend their master. Eventually, the crystal is destroyed, and Crota is refused to return to the physical realm, saving the tower and the city from the Hive once again. But the Guardians know there will be no peace until this god is slain. They decide to end the lunar threat once and for all and travel into Crota's ascendant realm. They navigate through the maze of his dark pit and cross a magic bridge over an endless abyss until they come across Ir Yut, a death singer. Hearing her song of death means to die, which begs the question, how can she sing it and not die? It's a question the Guardians don't get the answer to, as they slay the wizard before she completes her song. After her defeat, the Guardians finally confront Crota, the son of Oryx, on his Oversoul throne. Crota's command of the darkness is powerful. His very presence prevents the Guardians' regenerative healing powers, and he himself shrugs off damage from even their most powerful weapons and attacks. The battle seems hopeless, until the Guardians remember the power of his own sword. They steal one from one of his sword bearers, and while he's recuperating from one of their attacks, the Guardians destroy the Hive God's soul with his own sword. With nowhere for his soul to go, Crota is finally ended. He lets out a huge roar in his final moments that echo through the expanse of space. The Guardian can't help but feel like something is out there, listening, calculating, grieving. But with Crota's end, the Guardian has finally ended the threat of the Hive to Earth. They face their greatest champion, the monster of Luna, the titanic god knight that butchered the greatest army of Guardians ever assembled and stamped his ash under their boot, returning the symbol of hope to the moon. However, the epithet Son of Oryx is concerning. Was Crota really the apex of Hive power like we believed? Or was he just the youngest in line to a dark throne? If that's the case, who is Oryx, the father of the terrible Crota? He's important enough that the Hive have built shrines to honor him, shrines that also commune with the darkness. Is he still out there? These questions weigh heavy on the mind of the Guardian as they head to Venus to answer a stranger's call. And that ends the Dark Below story arc of Destiny. In part 2, we'll be digging into the original story of Destiny in all its greatness.
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
But with that, I'm done here, so thank you for watching and see you later. Hotline Miami was released in October of 2012 and introduced us to a world that bombarded our senses with bright neon colors, awesome music, and gruesome violence. But GOAT